Support for Donnybrook is provided in part by Design Air Heating and Cooling.
Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it. Unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Yes, the days are getting longer and warmer, perfect for the upcoming Mardi Gras weekend here in St. Louis. We're going to talk about a lot of things this week, but first let's meet the panelists, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese. Joe Holleman from the Post-Dispatch, sitting in for Bill McClellan, who's taking the week off. Sarah Fenske from the 314 podcast and St. Louis Magazine. And from the St. Louis American, editor and columnist, Alvin Reid, who on Saturday will be inducted into the Kirkwood Outstanding Alumni Hall of Fame. That's right. Alvin Reid will be enshrined Saturday afternoon, along with some other greats, including Nikki Glazer. Am I right?
That is correct. She will not be there, so, too bad. Everybody can pay attention to me.
And after all your sports betting, they let you in. They didn't follow the Pete Rose rule.
Well, it hasn't been enacted in Missouri yet, or else I probably would have just gambled my way right on out of it.
We're so proud of you.
Well, it's an honor, and 14 others, 1 has passed away, but 14 others will be there, including shout out to Doug Vaughn is also going in also.
I didn't know he was a Kirkwood. Fantastic. Well, congratulations. Hey, Joe, I want to ask you about a rather lengthy column you wrote on the newly elected sheriff, Alfred Montgomery, who really has not gotten off to a very good start. No. Among other things, speaking of gambling, he gave a deputy a choice. You can keep your job or lose your job, but you'll keep the job if you roll a 7 with these dice. Little did he know the deputy was recording the conversation. I think that's a fireable offense, and there should be some action taken to get rid of the new sheriff.
You mentioned that the story was long. That was half of what I originally wrote, and this man has only been in office for 2 months. It's absurd, actually, what has happened in that office in just 2 months. Not that this was ever a shining office of example of democracy. It's a patronage job for party faithfuls. So I'm not going to go over the top here and say the once great department has been laid low. But in 2 months, he's tried to force a bunch of people to resign. Then went out to a guy working a secondary job, wanted to confiscate his personal handgun and kick him off the job. Then there was the case, let's not forget the one where there is a report that a detainee at the St. Louis jail is having sexual relations with a deputy sheriff. Okay, the sheriff has no criminal law enforcement powers, and it's not in charge of the jail. But undaunted, Alfred Montgomery marches down to the jail, wants to interview the detainee, and when the deputy jail commissioner decides, well, you can't do that, Alfred handcuffs her and arrests her, and then gets on television and says, oh, I had permission from the Department of Public Safety and the police department. They broke their ankles trying to get back to the television stations to go, no, we didn't. So he lied about that. And then now making a guy roll dice to save his job.
Literally
roll dice to save his job. And the part I think that bothered me on just sort of a more human level was the deal was if he rolled a 7 in 2 rolls, he got to do it his way. He did that, and he still turned around and wouldn't honor the bet.
Okay.
So I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, and he was going to, they had already arranged, I thought, for him to take time to grieve his father, the loss of his dad, and he's obviously running for alderman. But this is so alarming and so disturbing. And if you look down the road at what could happen, I think he has to be removed from office. This is not a good start. As you said, he's off to a start, just not a good start.
Yeah, I mean, I was no fan of his predecessor. Vernon Betts certainly had a bunch of very public screw-ups, embarrassing things that happened, lawsuits, but this is really bad. And some lawyers that I've talked to, they feel that this would be up to Andrew Bailey, that he would have to bring a quo warranto, like he did for Kim Gardner, and come in, and then the state would get to appoint somebody. So once again, it's kind of like, what, we can't elect people in this town? It feels like, once again, we made a bad choice.
Well, and there are even questions, though, about the election. I mean, they were raised by Vernon Betts.
Well, okay,
ironically.
all right. This
but
just sounds
200 votes.
This just sounds so Trumpish. And government by chaos, and the first election was fixed, and on and on and on. Look, folks, you elected this guy, and this is what you get. And other people have gotten the city sued, and other people have been horrible in their office, and other people have done all kind of crazy stuff. Listen, I am not a big fan of Sheriff Montgomery either. In fact, I'm not a fan of his at all. But all this take the job away from him? No.
Yeah, because
three years from now, vote him out.
Alvin, he's going to cost the city millions in civil lawsuits.
The police have cost the city 10 times that.
Yeah,
Are we going to fire the chief? Are we going to fire when the state takes over? Are we going to fire the state?
I don't think there's been as many lawsuits per month with the police department as there are with. I mean, I understand your point.
Once again, how many are pending against the president of the United States right now? I'm just telling you, right now, this is how government is being run. I don't like it. Hopefully, a lot of people don't like it, but it is what it is.
Well, they went after Kim Gardner because she was, among other things, a nursing student.
Well, but that's the thing.
On company time.
Wait,
I think this is worse.
If it only had been her doing her job poorly, she would probably still be in that job, or at least running for the office, would have had to run again. Who knows if she would have won.
Possibly getting reelected.
But possibly getting reelected. But the reason she lost that office was because of the tragedy that happened on the city street, and then found out she wasn't even doing her job and all that.
I think he should be charged criminally for theft of a firearm, which is when he took it away from the guy working private security.
Well, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up seeing a criminal charge for arresting this jail commissioner.
Yes.
That's a clear
the FBI.
deprivation of civil rights. That's exactly the kind of clear-cut case that the feds like. And I think we'll see some action on this. I hope that it spurs us to look at the bigger picture. You know, we had this whole charter commission that looked at how to reform St. Louis government. For some reason, we didn't talk at all about the sheriff's office. There's no reason we need an elected sheriff. That's a department that could come under the St. Louis Police or come under the Corrections Commissioner, and it would save a lot of complications.
And when his predecessor said that he was unfit to be a deputy, that tells me all I need to know. No, that you know, the dereliction of duty, he was a bad apple as a deputy. That tells you something.
Well, and I think Sarah's point is the important point.
Yeah.
And
you need to make a change.
Let's move along because we have a lot of topics and limited time as always. Wendy, it was announced this week that the taste actually was broken by Sarah Fenske. Nothing was announced. She broke the story out of thin air. And just like that, the gumshoe that she is.
And it was true.
Finally, something.
Imagine that.
So the taste of St. Louis is moving to Clayton. It's not going to be in downtown St. Louis, where it was the past couple of years. And for many years it was in downtown St. Louis. It's going to be on Merrimack and Brentwood Avenues in Clayton on the 15th, 16th, and 17th of August. What do you think?
I think it's going to be really, really hot. And I think it will probably do well in Clayton. And while I think the organizers' attitude in leaving was very gracious and magnanimous, and he was not casting any aspersions about safety issues or concerns, but I think it just adds to the current drip, drip, drip that we are seeing in the city of St. Louis.
Well, you know, for the city, they said the problem is you have to close down the streets, and there was some $200,000. And if it truly costs that much, then it does. I mean, I don't know that the city can waive, you know, hey, for Taste of St. Louis, you don't have to pay. But if we do this, you know, when we have the 5K, they have to pay. So I think rock and hard place. Now, granted, looks bad, but I just don't think this is the fault of anyone other than things cost money.
Circumstances.
Yeah.
And we do know that the Annie Malone Parade, which you expertly talked about last week, Alvin, has been uncanceled.
Yes.
Last week on the show, it had been canceled, but since then, they found the money.
Yeah, I guess you wrote a check, which we suggested that you do last week. No, Casey Lee went down to Jefferson City.
2 checks out of 2 different accounts.
Yeah. Said she talked to some people, and they got on the phone. Now, she didn't say who she talked to or who they got on the phone with, but the parade is going to go on. So at least they saved that in May.
Yeah, I'm glad that parade is coming back. What a great tradition, 115 years. We want to keep nice things, not lose them. I think Taste of St. Louis leaving is a bummer. Like, as a city resident, as somebody who roots for downtown, I'm sad about it. I appreciate they were classy in the way that they left. But, I talked to the woman who runs the Cherokee Street district there, and she said there's some studies that if you can get people to interact with these kind of spaces and something that's like a public event and you feel invited, then you feel more comfortable coming back the next time. You understand where the parking is. Oh, I saw this restaurant. I could easily handle this. And it's just a way of like sort of familiarizing yourself with something that might otherwise be intimidating. So I think these events are really important for downtown. And I wish we could find a way to maybe make it a little bit easier, a little bit less costly to get people down on those streets. Wash Ave should be closed to cars on weekends, and we should be mobilizing the streetscape.
Right. I mean, when it says, well, yes, they can waive fees. If the city's imposing a fee, they can waive a fee.
No, I know they
They're
can.
just choosing not to.
No, but I said, but they can't. If you waive it for Taste of St. Louis, then you'll have a line of
then
people.
let's look into it. And I don't think it's a lethal blow.
Sure.
But when you start listing all the things in the city, it goes on the negative side.
Yeah.
There's no other way about it.
No, the negative side was when Wave Taco this week moved out and said it was clearly because of crime and drug use and homeless and lots of problems. This is just, hey, they're going for 3 days to Clayton. I don't think it's a big boon for Clayton. I think what cities need are bakeries and corner cafes and people enjoying coffee on the sidewalk and al fresco dining that goes on 50 or so weeks a year.
Yeah.
Maybe not outside 50 weeks a year, but you get the idea.
Where you
not
live,
a 3-day
bro?
festival.
And the proper
No,
amount of police
Kirkwood, South Main Street in St. Charles, South Grand.
No,
That's what
for
you
sure.
need.
So you're saying new businesses.
Right.
I think every government understands that.
I don't think any government around here understands
No, they just
that.
don't do very well at attracting them.
Well,
they want them, they just can't get them.
I don't think they want them.
But Charlie, I
think they
that's
want
it.
money from developers for their running for campaign. And if a little guy says, I want to put a bakery here, no one listens.
And I think there's a feeling that you have to ask the Cardinals for permission to put anything down there around the stadium. I really do.
Part of what he said is the problem is it was hard to get sponsors at Ballpark Village because they would compete with the sponsorship deals already in place at Ballpark Village. So the Cardinals have sucked some oxygen out of that part of downtown.
And I think Clayton was ready for it. I think the officials there know that downtown needs a little more excitement, entertainment, nightlife, something like that. And I suspect there's going to be more announcements in 2025 for Clayton. Now, the question is, will Palestinian dancers be allowed to perform at the Taste of St. Louis in Clayton?
Well, I sure hope they will.
Well, remember they had trouble getting into the art fair.
I remember
okay,
that.
well, let's move on to you. Alvin Reid. There's a state representative out of Wentzville by the name of Trisha Burns. She's a Republican, and she wanted to test the state's suicide hotline. So she actually sent some messages saying that she was distraught, that she had a gun to her head, she was suicidal. It was just as a secret shopper. She was trying to see if the system actually worked or if it was insensitive. Well, turns out law enforcement scrambled to respond. At least that's what law enforcement said. And now she possibly faces criminal charges. Should she?
If it's a misdemeanor, I think maybe she should be charged because what she did was illegal, but it's also foolhardy. You can't dial 911 and say there's a man in my house with a gun to my kid's head or something like that because they're going to respond and they'll be, there's danger in ambulances and there's danger in police cars driving at high rates of speed. This was foolhardy and there should be a punishment for this.
I don't think it should be a big punishment whatsoever. I thought it was very interesting in the Good Post-Dispatch story about this. They mentioned that she was apparently there with Compass Behavioral Health. That's like the contractor that works on this system. So it wasn't just someone sitting around trying to like prank things for tee-hees. It's like she's trying to figure out what's working. How are you going to figure out what's working if you don't have someone who is going in and, acting as if it's really happening? I get that we all can't do this, but in this case, I feel like giving her the lightest of slaps seems
And that's fine, the lightest of slaps. But I always wonder about the meeting where somebody said, hey, let's try this. Where are the grown-ups to say, let's not? There's got to be a different way to test the system, to test the efficiency, to test the response time without actually involving law enforcement. I'm not sure what that is, but this just seems to me to be something that a grown-up would not have said to do.
I'm going to side with Sarah a bit on this. I get where there should be a light slap, but the idea that she was doing something nefarious or gimmicky, I think is completely wrong. And when you say there should be some other way, but then you said, but I don't know what that is. How else do you test the system if you call everybody up and go, okay, this isn't real. Well, then you're not getting a real response to what happened. And her problem was she was saying that people who were having thoughts of suicide were getting auto texts, weren't even talking to a person. When we all assume that if you call one of those lines, you get a live person who says, hi, can I talk to you, whatever? No, you're getting a robocall that says, hi, I hope you feel well. How else do you test this?
And in her first text, she was responding with a survey.
Yeah. So, I get to where what she did rubs people the wrong way. But I think what she might have done is uncovered a problem.
Right. Okay, so use it. Use this to
Well, and I think that's what she's doing.
Okay, that's
but
fine.
Instead, they seem to be coming after her.
But I still think it's a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You can't do that.
A misdemeanor is kind of a big deal. Like, you get handcuffed, you get booked. That, to me, feels like that grossly exceeds
Send her a
what's going on
parking
here.
ticket.
There you go, a citation.
How about community service? Maybe we'll have
That's a good one.
a wise
Let her
judge,
do
something
it on
like
the,
Let
that.
her pick up trash or work
Or
the
take the
suicide
calls.
hotline. Yeah.
Take the calls.
Or make a donation to 9 PBS. Yeah, that'll solve everything. Sarah, I want to ask you, the mayoral primary in the city of St. Louis is finally next week. We've been talking about this for quite some time.
Yeah.
And if folks want more information about the candidates, they can go to 9pbs.org and
/elections.
and see what work you did by interviewing the 4 major candidates. There are only 4 candidates, right?
That's right.
But here we are, just days away. Where do we stand? What are the latest issues?
Well, so the big sort of online kerfuffle, and I just want to get this out here. I know a lot of people have gotten sick of this race, and they specifically are sick of Tishaura Jones and Kara Spencer just yelling at each other and sniping at each other. And I get
Vervis.
it.
And Vervis.
And Tishaura's dad has also jumped into the melee. It's made being online kind of exhausting. But hey, that election is coming up Tuesday. It'll all be over. So the big fight that happened online this week is Kara Spencer posted a map that showed where all her donors were coming from, and then in contrast, she posted one that showed that Tishaura Jones's donors were coming from all over the country, that there was more coming from outside St. Louis. And this drew, it almost seemed like it was a Rorschach test for how people in St. Louis feel about this issue. Such heated replies, people saying, oh, I want their contributions to be from St. Louisans. Other people saying, hey, Tishaura Jones as a black woman has not had access necessarily to the white power structure's capital. And so she's drawing on the community that she has, her sorority, people from outside the city. It got really heated. I'm honestly not sure where I fall on this.
Well, I think the mayor's problem with the business community was when there was a security problem, she kind of blamed Robert O'Loughlin for not doing enough. She got in a big kerfuffle with Bob Clark, the billionaire, a guy who's been very generous to Democrats. In fact, he's building the Barack Obama Museum in Chicago. She didn't make enough friends in the business community, so she's going to be behind the ball when it comes to raising money. And she's got to go around the country, I guess.
Now, I'm in a fraternity, a national black fraternity. And if I ran for office, I would get money from all over the country. Not because of who I am, but because they would be supporting me because I am their fraternity brother. So there's something real to that. This one just doesn't rise to the ire of, some of these other issues that are going on. Okay, she's got support from all over the country. I mean, I don't get this one. I mean, but they're running out of things to argue
well,
about.
and it's campaign material, which is the one thing that I hate reading material about a week before an election because it's either coming from a supporter or a detractor of whomever. And the comments, especially on social media, where each side gets all of their commenters to flood it with all their comments, and they're just running for office. This is pure politics. Pure campaigning. We would all print that map at a newspaper showing where donations came from.
Right.
And everybody would then go on our webpage and put in all of their reasons on why this was good for Tishaura or bad for Kara or what. It's campaigning.
But Charlie brings up that Bob O'Loughlin story and the call from within Tishaura, Mayor Jones' office, saying that if Mr. O'Loughlin has a problem, he should spend more money. This is the guy who, between the pandemic and post-pandemic world, was putting so much money in downtown St. Louis. I thought that was just poor form.
Well, I will say, Medium, which is a publication of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, had a glowing story on Mayor Jones this week, saying, look at her crime record. She's done a great job. I think it's possible she's better loved in other parts of the country than she is in her own hometown. But they say that a prophet is not honored in his own hometown.
That's true about a lot of. That's true.
I think so. Yeah. Maybe she's America's mayor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The only thing missing from that mayor's conference article was at the end when they said, "And they all lived happily ever after." Right. I mean, because it was.
Well, we'll see.
Tuesday. We'll see.
When Andrew Jones runs against Michael Butler, we'll have a lot to talk about.
Well, and I think the U.S. Conference of Mayors statement goes along with the map. It's all politics.
It is politics.
And Tishaura Jones has attended Conference of Mayor events and has made a lot of friends. So if a new mayor gets elected, I'm guessing, and goes to a bunch of U.S. Conference of Mayors, 4 years from now, they'll write a letter for them.
Oh, wait a minute. The next mayor isn't going to leave the city, right?
No,
they ain't never going to go no place.
No.
Right.
You can't now.
That's right. Maybe not when
this journal has put them on.
Right.
Yeah, maybe not when the snow
they're
and ice,
to Uber to work. Right. Okay.
All right. Hey, Joe, I want to ask you about a story that Lauren Traeger had for KMOV. It was 12 minutes long, which by television standards is pretty lengthy. And as it turns out, there are in parts of St. Louis, at least on Penrose apparently, some questionable activities going on in homes. And these were described as sex parties, where people learn about them online and then they show up. And I don't know exactly what's going on inside of these dwellings. Because the reporters didn't get inside.
Right.
But it's raised some concerns. Are you concerned about all this?
No. I don't know what's going on in those houses. I don't care what's going on in those houses. I just don't care. I mean, it was just, they're having sex parties in the privacy of their own home. What? I thought we were all supposed to get out of people's bedrooms. Now we want to go back into it? I mean, I just didn't see the point of this story, quite honestly.
You're so continental, Joe. Really.
No.
You're so sophisticated.
People do it in your home. That's just basic privacy rights.
The story.
Here comes Chesterfield.
Here comes Chesterfield.
And Kirkwood is with you, I think.
Here comes Chesterfield, where we were not invited.
Right. Where morality still exists.
I know that comes as a big shock. But no, I mean, when they're talking about a nude couple wandering down the street and, children, yes, of course.
The children.
I mean, I know that.
The children.
Well, the children. The children love the books. But I think it's not something that any neighborhood is going to be proud to put in its HOA.
Agreed. I mean, look, the gambling, the cannabis, the drinking. You haven't lost me yet. But the wild sex parties on my block that they're advertising and what they're offering you if you come to this
because
house.
That brings the cream of the crop.
Right, you gotta draw the line someplace. And that just goes a little bit too far. Penrose Lane.
But Joe does bring up a good point. It could have been a bunch of nude people sitting around. We don't know. I mean, as a matter of fact.
At 4 o'clock in the morning.
I think I know.
Let me say this. Cub reporter Larry Connors in Texas personally investigated the little whorehouse in Texas, best little whorehouse in Texas. When he was a young reporter, he actually went in and used the services. And that was his reporting, and he was able to determine that, yes, indeed. And that led to the closure of one of the most storied houses of prostitution in the country, if not the world.
But now that story made no allegation that people were being charged. This was a party. I'm talking about the Channel 4 story that we're talking about. There was never an allegation that there was an admission charge.
Well, no, there was that allegation. And that I felt made this slightly different. If you're regularly having parties where you charge for admission, that does make me feel like this is a little different. I will say, though, 12 minutes on this. I shared some of Joe's. Like, only in St. Louis could we put 12 minutes into an expose about sex clubs, and somehow it's about the neighbors are mad about parking. Like, it was the least sexy story I've ever read.
It's St. Louis. course, that's all they care. If everybody from the party would drive in 2 cars, they'd be fine.
My first thought was, do they still have sweeps weeks? Because that was a typical sweeps week story, right?
Well, Sarah has a podcast on downtown living this week. You interviewed developer Alex Oliver. And are you going to apologize to me for correcting me on the air? We only have a minute to go, I'm being told. But basically, people would need to see this because he has different views than you had regarding nightclubs that last till 3 a.m. in downtown St. Louis.
Yeah, I came in very pro nightclub. I felt like this is kind of what introduced me to cities, helped me understand how vital they are. He made some really good points against them. I'm coming around to his point of view.
I'm not.
I did think.
Have you listened to the podcast?
I will, and I won't. I mean, I will listen to it, but I won't change my mind.
He will listen to it with an open mind.
I did think that. I did think that your point was a good one because that is how people are introduced to city living. Yeah. They're introduced to certain neighborhoods. If you could keep a nice buffer between the neighbors and the nightclubs, then I think it would be a win-win.
Right. If the sex party goes till 3 a.m., I got a problem with it. But the regular old nightclub, I'm fine. Come on. Right.
There's a fine line between some of those nightclubs and what goes on in people's lives.
My mom's on a
Hey, let's go to the old mailbag.
Cruise. I'm glad she's not watching.
Let's clean this up by going to the old mailbag. Potholes in the city of St. Louis equal the progressive approach to low-budget traffic calming. That coming from Diane Rademacher of South St. Louis City. John Gunther, architect, wrote, does the city of St. Louis want to allow a new tower to compete with the height of the iconic Gateway Arch, a national landmark? We hope that the impact of the height of this tower will be properly evaluated before a decision is reached. Mr. Gunther is also the author of a book on the Gateway Arch. With regard to the St. Louis County Animal Shelter, I agree having a plan is good governance, but the nuclear option of 100% euthanasia, help me out, Alvin, is not a good plan nor good governance. That from Karen Condon of Hazelwood, Missouri. You can write us, care of 9PBS 63108. We love those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org, and use hashtag DonnybrookSTL on social media. Call the 9 line at 314-512-9094. Listen to us on your favorite podcast source. And on the 9PBS YouTube channel, we have a program, Last Call. This week we'll talk about new developments in the plan by Cordish to build a tall tower and more on the riverfront where the Millennium Hotel is. We'll see you next week.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.